It's the KDAY Morning Show with CeCe and Romeo. Mornings on 93.5 KDAY.
KDAY Morning Show, CeCe and Romeo.
Yes.
We have Congresswoman Maxine Waters with us this morning.
Yes,
How
we
are you
do.
doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm in Washington. We're in between votes, but I'm anxious to talk with you. Thank you for having me on today.
It
Of
is our
course.
pleasure. Now, first of all, we have to talk about it. We all saw what happened yesterday. It was so unfortunate. What are your thoughts on the grand jury decision on the killing of Breonna Taylor?
Well, of course, I am absolutely heartbroken that she could have been killed in the way that she was done, with the police not even having the proper warrant, to get into her home while she was in bed asleep. And then we have a decision that does not even deal with the cop who did the shooting that killed her, dealt with the other police officers, and basically talked about they endangered the neighbors. It is an outrageous decision, and I can understand why people are hitting the streets and they're protesting. This is the kind of thing that we're talking about when we talk about there's got to be police reform.
Definitely, I agree with you. What can we do as citizens to help end police brutality in our communities? Happening every day, Mrs. Waters, every day.
Well, what people don't understand is where the power lies. People talk about wanting to do something about it, but they keep electing the same city council members, the same mayors, and the police chiefs. These are the people with the power. The city council members hold their budgets. They decide their pay. They decide their pay raise.
Yeah.
They decide their overtime pay. But nobody really focuses on them. And many of them are intimidated by the police unions who have a lot of power and a lot of money and who will threaten to campaign against them. But the power lies right in the city. And those members of the city council have the power to make sure that they are fired, that the policies change, all of that. Then, of course, you have to deal with your district attorneys and whether or not, once they have evidence, particularly if it is sent to them by the police commission, that they will go forward with the indictments. So people got to deal with the elected officials that are on the ballots and vote down ballots and know who has the responsibility and the power.
Yeah, it definitely starts in our neighborhood, that's for sure. Now, Congresswoman Maxine Waters hanging out with us on the KDAY Morning Show. Can you speak on the loss of Supreme Court Judge Ruth Bader Ginsberg? Can you speak on her, please?
Well, yes, absolutely. She was known as the notorious one because she was such a powerhouse. This was such a powerhouse that had so much influence, who really cared about women and those who did not receive, justice maybe in the lower courts. And when she had the ability to, cast her vote, it was always on the side of people who she believes had not been handled properly, and the issues that she believed were of real concern to most of the people that certainly would not get attended to but for her presence there and others like her. And so she is a powerhouse that is recorded in history as the second woman on the Supreme Court who made a big name for herself, and that we'll be holding memorial services for her in the Capitol here tomorrow. But what a great loss, but what a great woman.
Absolutely a great loss. There's been a lot of talk. There's, people are talking about it over social media. A lot of articles are being written about this. Do you, what do you feel? Should a new judge be appointed after the elections?
Absolutely. This business to rush to appointment is certainly, the president of the United States, who is power hungry and power crazy and wants to pack the Supreme Court as he tries to get reelected and be able to have almost total control over this country. This is a dangerous man. This is a man who never should have been elected to the presidency of the United States. He is in bed with Putin in Russia and the oligarchs of Russia and Kim Jong-un of North Korea. He really wants to be a dictator. And he's doing everything that he can to get to that point. We've got to stop him, and we certainly got to do everything to stop this appointment.
Yeah, that is so true, because in 2016, they definitely wanted to wait. I don't understand why they don't want to do that now. How is it important to be counting the census? We talk about it every day on our morning show. It's so important that people fill out those forms. Can you tell KDAY Nation how important it is, please?
How important it is
for the U.S. Census? For the U.S. Census form?
To fill out the U.S. Census.
Oh, my God. That's everything. What people don't realize is The amount of money and resources that come from the federal government is determined by the numbers. And whether we're talking about Head Start or senior citizens programs, those programs that are so important to so many communities, we won't have the money that we deserve to have if the numbers are not there. And the forms are so easy to fill out. It does not take a lot. You don't have to be afraid. They are confidential. Nobody is going to get your information. A lot of people were saying, well, I don't want them to come after me. I may have a trafficker warrant. Nobody cares about that warrant. Nobody is going to do anything. They don't have access to that information. Please fill out those forms so that we can get the resources into our communities that help with children and seniors and veterans and all of the folks who deserve the support of their nation, of their country.
Yes, and it only takes less than 10 minutes. So you guys make sure you fill out your census today. Now, I want to ask you, how has the pandemic impacted your district, and what are you doing to help us get through these tough times? Because times are tough right now.
Times are very tough. I'm very pleased that the first response we had to COVID-19 was in something known as the CARES Act. The CARES Act is what determined those stimulus checks of $1,200 for each of 2 adults in the family, $500 for each child. And they also determined the $600 in addition that we gave to those people who were getting unemployment checks. Some of them just get small unemployment checks. So the $600 that we put on top of that really did enable them to pay rent or to buy food, gasoline, et cetera, et cetera. And in addition to that, we did a great job with getting what is known as PPE. That's the equipment to our hospitals and our clinics and to our nurses, et cetera. And so we did a good job with that. But now we're in negotiations for something called the HEROES Act. That money has run out and all of the eviction moratoriums are expired. And so we've got to get more money into our communities to help people during this COVID-19 and this pandemic that we're faced with. And so we're having a tough time with the negotiations. The Republicans don't want to spend the money. We passed the bill out of our House, $3.4 trillion. $1 trillion of that would go to the cities and the states so that they can hire and keep the first responders and not lay off people, the janitors, the clerks, all of those people who keep our economy going. And so we're in a tough negotiation. And the president has interfered with that. We need money now to pay the rent. The rent payments, many people have missed 2 months already. The little landlords with 2, 4, and 6 units, many of them, this is their retirement income. And so if they don't get the money, they are not able to take care of themselves. And even if they have a mortgage and get forbearance, they still need that money. These little landlords got to pay, the utility bills oftentimes. They certainly got to pay for repairs when things break down. But without that, they cannot do it. And so they are absolutely up in arms. They're angry about this. The president does not care. He interfered with the negotiations. He did a moratorium on evictions with no money until December, right in the Christmas holidays, I believe. And so we're in a mess back here, but we're working hard to straighten it out.
Man, got to straighten. They got to cut those checks. Yes, we're definitely still here. Can you hear us? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Okay, well, let's talk about that 43rd district. Now, what do you consider your most important accomplishments in the 43rd district of California?
Well, I'm absolutely well known all over the country. First of all,
yes,
I'm
you
well
are.
known because I speak truth to power. I fight. You don't get too big. The bigger you are, the harder you fall. I took on the president of the United States. I first called for his impeachment. I didn't get any support for it, but now with this president talking about he will not even honor what the results of the election are if he is not reelected. And he's talking about causing a civil war and a confrontation. So that's one thing I'd like to point out. But in addition to that, our duties are divided 2 ways. First of all, we take care of our constituent complaints. We have people in our district offices. For people who are in prison, Maybe they're trying to get transferred so they can get closer to their relatives to see them. For people who didn't get their Social Security checks and they want us to help them. For people who having problems with their postal service, they want us to help them, and they're having a lot of problems with postal service right now. They do all of those kinds of things. And then here in Washington, I am the first African American and the first woman to be the chair of the powerful Financial Services Committee. I have all of Wall Street. I have all of the banks and the insurance companies, the International Monetary Fund, and all of these, which we are working on every day. I am responsible for Dodd-Frank reforms. We, in 2008, got into a situation where our homes were being foreclosed on because of the predatory lending that the banks were doing. I helped to get the reforms in that and to do loan modifications and kept people in their homes. In addition to that, I help to direct all the funds that I can. I help to build the Senior Citizen Center in, for example, in Inglewood. All of my senior citizens who are in Inglewood and Hawthorne and Gardena and Torrance and all of these places, we make sure that we do everything to give support to them through the city. And so we're doing big public policy up here. We're confronting the big banks about predatory lending and the fraud that they're involved in. I have caused some of those board members to be fired or retired from the boards because they've been sitting there and they've been a part of this fraud that have been going on. And all that was happening in federal government before I got there was they were getting fines, but fines became the cost of doing business. Now I want them in jail. I want them absolutely dealt with in a way that will help them to understand that we're not going to go through 2008 again, where all of these homes were foreclosed on in our communities. People who signed on the dotted line for mortgages they didn't understand, or signed for these exotic loans that said you don't need any money to get in, or you pay a little money down and it will reset in 6 months or 9 months or 10 months. But the devil comes due at that point, and if you don't have it, your homes get foreclosed on. We're about time public policy here, about not only dealing with our home ownership, but we're dealing with, for example, I take care of all the public housing to make sure that poor people have a safety net, that they have some place to live. There are people who want to get rid of public housing. These are people who are disabled, they're senior, they're poor, and so we have to make sure we have capital appropriations to keep these housing projects going, etc. That's some of the things that we do. Banking, housing, all of those things. Now, I want to tell you something about homelessness. We have homelessness that's expanding all over the country. And so we have people going around saying, look, you haven't done anything. We send the money from the federal government. It comes to the city. We have something called LASA that runs these programs for the city. And in the greater Los Angeles area and the county area, they decide the nonprofits who identify the nonprofits who get that money for shelters. And we're also had on the ballot, both in the county and the city, more money for them to build affordable housing with, and what we know call supportive services. Many of our people that are on the streets, whether they're in Skid Row or out in our communities, they are ill. They have mental problems, and we want to get them into affordable housing, but we want to have supportive services so they get there to the doctor for their appointments, that they're taken care of and they know how to, bathe and take care of themselves and all of that. So I'm about public policy. I'm about constituent services, and I'm an organizer also. And I have a reputation for all of that.
Right. No, you do. Absolutely. You have been putting in work. With that being said, after 50 terms, Congresswoman, has it gotten easier or harder to get things done in Congress?
Well, it's about what is happening at every level of government. You have your city, and I just explained to you their responsibility in overseeing, the police departments, et cetera. Also, they have, the problems of keeping the streets clean and making sure the trees are trimmed and making sure that, you do the kinds of services for people to have a decent quality of life in our communities. And then you have the state legislatures who are responsible for helping to make sure that you have enough money for the schools and the school system and healthcare and all of that, working with the counties. The counties are really an extension of the state legislatures. That's why it's so important for people to know their legislators and vote down ballot so that all of these things can be taken care of. Congress of the United States is about the big public policy for the entire country. We're dealing with not only the criminal justice and the jury system and all of that. We're dealing with international relationships. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with trade. We're dealing with all of these big issues that impact everybody's lives. And so whether we have all of the standing committees of the Congress who are special experts in these areas that help to put the legislation together. We also have the President of the United States, these three separate organs of the government. You have the executive, you have the judiciary, and you have the legislature. And we all have our role to play. The President of the United States has a lot of power, and he's got, the ability to choose people to go in his cabinet. Mm-hmm. This president has done a terrible job. I want to tell you, when you take a look at Betsy DeVos, who is in charge of education, she is destroying public education. Mm-hmm. She is with the private post-secondary guys that come into our community and rip off our community, telling people they can train them to become computer operators or nurses, aides, what have you. These people build a lot of debt, and then they get caught in this debt cycle, and they can't work it out. They can't rent a house. They can't do anything. So we're dealing with all of the financial services part, and I am on payday loans. We are stopping payday loans in our community with these 300 to 400% interest rates. Mm-hmm. Again, people caught up in this cycle of debt that they can never get out of. And so it's a massive responsibility that you have. Yes. It takes years of experience to know how to do this. And it takes years of experience to become the chair of the committee. That's why I'm the first woman and the first Black to ever be the head of the Financial Services Committee. Yeah. And so I'm dealing with all of the big banks. As a matter of fact, just on the phone with Jamie Dimon and some of them yesterday about some of the items that we see that looks as if they're going back towards some of the exotic loans and the predatory lending that they're doing. And all of this, I want you to know, I pay special attention to Haiti and to all of the countries of the Caribbean. If some of us were not there, they would not get this attention. And I have been dealing with Haiti for years. Haiti has been, basically misused and abused by everything and everybody. But I pay attention to the degree that I can. And I'm doing that now because they are underfunded in terms of COVID-19. It's a poor country. And so in addition to the Caribbean and to Haiti, my community and my country, of course, are paramount. And they're first in all of this. But again, having the years of experience that I have, and the commitment that I have for fairness and justice and equality, I will take on whatever I need to take on. And so a lot of people know me because of these things. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, whatever the problem is, whatever the district is, I get calls from all over the country, but the 43rd district comes first. People don't know what the 43rd district is. They think it's maybe just South Central LA. They don't know that I have North Torrance. I have Harbor City. Mm-hmm. I have Lawndale. I have Hawthorne, I have Gardena, I have Westchester. And so I have all of this diversity that I'm managing all the time. Westchester is concerned about the airport intruding into their community. I work with our site, dealing with that to make sure that we understand that it is an economic engine that we depend on for jobs, etc. But they cannot intrude into Westchester and create problems for them, the noise and all of that goes along with their being involved. Mm-hmm. Whether you're talking about that or Torrance, where I'm dealing a lot with many of the small businesses, I'm known for opening up opportunities for small businesses. I'm all about doing away with the wealth gap. And I've done that even when I was in the legislature in California. I created the Emerging Fund for Blacks and minorities to be able to manage the assets of our government. and open up opportunities to create these jobs in the financial services community. It is a lot to know and understand. And so this is my life. This is what I'm dedicated to. I don't do other things. I do politics. I do government. This is what I do every day of my life. And this is what I'm all about. And I'm pleased to be of service. And I love it when I win. And I'm not happy when I can't solve problems, but I work at it every day of my life. That's who I am.
Well, we truly appreciate it. Excuse me, Congresswoman Maxine Waters. Thank you so much. And everything we talked about today is why we need to get out and make sure we vote.
Right.
Because it's so important November the 3rd that we go ahead and do the right thing. But thank you. We know you're in Washington, D.C., but you took our time to hang out with us today. We appreciate that.
Well, thank you guys for having me on. It's just so much to talk about. Allow me the chance to come on from time to time and update you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And I just want to say that we saw the video, went viral, and we talked about it on KDAY when you stopped and made sure a black man that was stopped by the police was safe, and we appreciate that.
We really do. Yes.
You're so welcome. And when I'm driving, and I do drive all through my district, if I see it going down, I'm going to stop and I'm going to watch. I'll be at a safe distance. But I think doing this has saved a lot of people from maybe being shot, maybe being killed, or maybe being taken to jail for no reason. So I welcome that responsibility.
Well, thank you. We salute you.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Be safe out there and take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Congresswoman.
All right.
Goodbye.
Bye.